Okay, final day. Thank you everyone for joining. This is my final day of my 30 days, 30 Asian ingredients broadcast. And hey, I thought I might kind of like finish off with like something really extravagant, but you know, it kind of occurred to me that I missed out on one of these more basic ingredients during the last 29 days. So I have to cover this. And this is something called tapioca pearls, okay? Now, this is what I used back in my day running my Malaysian restaurant. I used to use this to make a very popular Malaysian dessert called Gula Melaka. It's a little bit confusing because Gula Melaka also refers to palm sugar. It's Malay for palm sugar. And this is palm sugar that are featured in a previous episode. And palm sugar that used in Malaysia is a different type of palm sugar to what you might expect to see in Thailand, okay? When I talk about palm sugar in my broadcast and in my recipes, this is what I refer to. They come in these kinds of logs, and you can find them in Asian grocery stores, either from Vietnam, Indonesia, or Malaysia. And I don't want to open this because I've opened so many packs of these during the course of my broadcast now, but this particular palm sugar will be a dark brown in color, and usually they'll be split into two logs on the inside. And the way you would use it is you would dissolve it in hot water and boiling water, or you will kind of like grate it, and usually you would use a cleaver to grate it with. It's fairly soft, and in terms of look and texture, once you've grated it, it's kind of like demerara sugar or like dark brown sugar. So you could, if you weren't using it to kind of like, it really depends on what you use it for, but if you have trouble finding it for some of the recipes, you may in fact be able to replace this with just demerara sugar. But this is palm sugar. Like I said, this is different to Thai palm sugar, and I got caught out once when I did a public cooking demonstration, where I was told to give a list of my ingredients to this supplier, this importer of Asian groceries, and they would have everything ready for me on the stage. I showed up on stage, and what they actually supplied me with was Thai palm sugar. Thai palm sugar usually come in discs, okay? This is in logs, like I said, right? Thai palm sugar usually comes in disc, like a saucer type disc, and there'll be like a light golden brown color, and it tends to be a lot more solid. And for that particular recipe that I was using it for on stage, it just wasn't suitable. So, you know, just make sure you're very clear when you're shopping for Asian ingredients, what you're actually going to be looking for at the grocery store, and make sure you're very clear to the supplier as well, to your grocery store owner as well, what you're using it for and what it should look like and all that, because not all Asians are on the same page as far as Asian ingredients, because Asia is a huge continent, and different cultures you know, use ingredients differently and have different basically have the same names for the different types of ingredients, and vice versa, different names for the same type of ingredients. That's why I thought I might do this 30 days. Now this is like I said, we are going to use Gula Melaka in my broadcast today, but the name of the dessert is also Gula Melaka, but this is kind of secondary, okay? The main ingredient in this dish is tapioca pearls, okay? Now, I know it's interchangeably used to refer to sago pearls, and in fact, this dish is sometimes referred to as sago Gula Melaka. Now, I had a look online, and apparently sago pearls and tapioca pearls can in fact generally be used interchangeably. The difference being that tapioca pearls, which is what I've used as a matter of course over many years of running my business, in fact comes from the tapioca, comes from cassava, whereas sago pearls come from the sago plant, okay? So there is that minor difference, but in terms of usage, generally the same. And the way they make tapioca pearls is basically from extracting tapioca starch and then kind of like adding water and then turning them into like little pearls. So whatever process they use, they do a pretty good job of it. This is what it looks like. And this particular dessert I'm making, very simple, but there's just a couple of key points that you need to keep in mind when you're making it, just to make sure you cook this through correctly. So I'm going to show you around the back here now, okay? Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, just so you know what it looks like at the end, okay? This is a Gula Melaka. Not this one here, but it's not the most aesthetically easy dish to photograph, and I used to struggle with my with taking photos of my food as well. And you can say that about a lot of Malaysian dishes. Just let me see if I can move this camera up a little bit. If you've been following my broadcast over these last few weeks, you'll know that I've struggled a little bit with camera angles. Okay, is that any better? Okay, now I've moved this other one here. That is a problem. By the way, I'm actually talking off 2 different cameras. So, okay, hopefully that will work. Okay, my head's not getting cut off in either of them. Okay, thanks guys. Now, I've got a pot of water boiling here. It is boiling. Didn't take long at all. And what you want to do is, when you're cooking sago pearls, and this is actually a very, very cheap dessert to prepare. This, just one packet like this goes a long way. Okay, so and one packet like this you can pick up at Asian grocery stores for like $1, $1.20, certainly here in Australia anyway. Okay, and you want a substantial amount of water because otherwise there's a lot of starch in this particular product. Okay, if you don't use enough water, everything is going to turn into a big starchy porridge in here and you won't be able to work it. So the water's boiling, and I've just thrown this here in here, and you just got to remember to keep stirring it. So first of all, bring the water to a boil. Second of all, well, first of all, make sure you have enough water in your saucepan, right? Second of all, bring the water to a boil before you throw it in. And third of all, don't forget to stir. Just gently stir it, okay? Because if you don't stir, they're going to start to clump up. It's not the hardest ingredient to handle, but there are, a couple of things to keep in mind when you're handling this particular ingredient. Otherwise, they do turn into lumps, and it's just not particularly pleasant when you're eating it. Now, so I've got this, and the other thing I wanted to mention, I've shown you this before already on one of my other broadcasts, so I don't want to have to do it again because I've just got like food just spilling over in my kitchen just from like my 30 days of cooking all this stuff, okay? But essentially, the way you would prepare palm sugar for this particular recipe anyway, what you would do is actually just have a saucepan of water. Usually for one log like this, you would use about 2 cups of water and just simmer it in a saucepan. If you want it to simmer faster, you can break it up a little bit more. You will need a cleaver, or you need to throw it in the food processor to kind of like soften it. Otherwise, you can just throw it in its current form, which is in logs, and just sit it in a saucepan with 2 cups of water and just let it simmer till the log just kind of like reduces and it's completely dissolved, right? And you're going to find with palm sugar as well, palm sugar syrup does thicken up once it cools down. But if you want a thicker palm sugar syrup, just use less water or simmer it a little bit longer till it thickens up a little bit. But don't forget, like I said, however thick you want it, just kind of like while it's simmering in the saucepan, just turn it off when it's nearly there, not when it's at the exact thickness or consistency you want, because it will continue to thicken up once you let it cool down, okay? And palm sugar syrup, once you've dissolved it, you can keep it in jars and it will keep really, really well in your fridge. And even out of the fridge, it will keep for a little bit as well. Maybe not in Australian summer heat. It's very, very hot today. And but keep it in the fridge and that will be your best bet, just in containers. And it also freezes as well. So now I'm just cooking this. You're going to find with cooking this, like I said, you need to stir this gently on and off. And what you want to do, because the pearls will start out completely white, right? And they're going to gradually start to get translucent. And what you want to do, the final outcome with this is you want it to be completely translucent. And that will take about 5 minutes or so of stirring. But what you want to do is just keep cooking it, and as it gradually, as the pearls turn more and more translucent, before they turn completely translucent, when you can still see a dot of white in the middle, turn off the heat and then stick the lid on and let let it keep covered for about 10 minutes, okay? So it's just simmering a little bit here. You will always find, you know, some elements of those pearls clumping up. That's not a big deal. Ultimately, like I said, just one packet, $1 packet of this will get you a long, long way. You can feed a whole family with this for dessert at the end of the meal. A very, very cheap and easy way to prepare an authentic Malaysian dessert. And the other thing I want to explain as well with Sago Gula Melaka. Like I said, I mentioned, if you're just joining me now, by the way, I use these tapioca pearls. The dessert is usually called Sago Gula Melaka or just Gula Melaka. Gula Melaka literally refers to the palm sugar. It's just because the palm sugar syrup features so prominently in this dish. Somehow it's always been called Gula Melaka. So when people talk about Gula Melaka, they can talk about the sugar or they can talk about the dessert itself, okay? And like I said, you know, just to clarify, we call it Sago Gula Melaka, and that does not help at all because, in fact, what I use in this particular dish is actually tapioca pearls. Tapioca pearls and sago pearls can be used interchangeably, but sago pearls come from the sago plant, and tapioca pearls come from cassava. Okay? And I'm just stirring this now. You're going to find that the water is going to thicken up, and don't forget to use enough water in this sauce. I've got probably about just underneath half a pot of water here. This is my Scanpan pot. Okay, and you want to wait till the water comes to a boil before you put it in, and you want to make sure that you just gently stir this. Okay, otherwise it will start to clump up. Yeah, it's similar. I think you're asking about bubble tea. Yeah, it is the same product, right? Okay, so bubble tea pearls are much larger. These are much smaller. I'm guessing with bubble tea, I've never made bubble tea because it's not a Malaysian thing. You can find it in Malaysia now, but I think from my memory, or my understanding of bubble tea, it was something that the Taiwanese community introduced to Sydney, Australia, and it's turned into a big fad for the last 10 years, but it wasn't something I grew up drinking in Malaysia, okay? But yeah, it is the same product, but bubble tea pearls are much larger, and I'm guessing they could probably prepare it the same way by boiling it, presumably for longer. I can't speak for sure because I've never attempted to make bubble tea. It's not really one of those, I'm not one of those people who call on to the whole bubble tea craze, I'm afraid. But Sago Gula Melaka, and if you're running a Malaysian business, this is a perfect dessert to make because it will keep for 3-4 days in your fridge, right? And the other thing is, you can prepare it in advance, and then all you need to do when you're serving it is either, if you want to like unmold it, tip it into a serving bowl, and then drizzle palm sugar syrup and coconut milk or coconut cream over it. Now, if you want to be really authentic, right? The palm sugar syrup, I mentioned the way you would dissolve it is to stick a couple of logs of this into a saucepan of water and dissolve it. But if you want to bring out extra flavor in it, usually they would suggest tying up like some pandan leaves. Okay, let's see how this is going. This is nearly there, and it's still got a fair bit of white in there. So I'm just going to cook this a little bit longer. It could probably use a bit more water as well. Probably I've got like just under half a saucepan of water. You could probably add maybe another 2 cups of water, and it wouldn't hurt. The more water, the better, really, because it helps it cook better. It does starch up very much. Okay, so it's turned into kind of like a, if you can see this, into a porridgey kind of consistency. Let me see if I can just lift it up a bit. Okay, hopefully you can see that. And what you want to do is you want to cook this. So it's got nothing in it, no salt, no sugar, nothing at all. Though, of course, depending on the recipe you're using this for, you could add other flavorings in this. But what we want to do is just boil the sago pearls till they're nearly completely translucent, not quite, okay? And I'm just going to cook this a little bit longer. And the other thing you want to do with the coconut milk or coconut cream that you're using as well is what they would generally suggest in Malaysia, certainly because we use fresh coconut milk or fresh milk. Well, we used in my day. Nowadays a lot of people use coconut milk or coconut cream out of a packet like I am now, right? But usually, if you're using fresh coconut milk, you would boil it a little bit just to kind of help prolong its lifespan, okay? And when you boil it, you would add a pinch of salt to it. And salt, it seems to be, I'm just going to cover this, right? I'm just going to crank it up for like 2 seconds and count it at once. and I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to leave this off but covered for about 5-10 minutes, and then we're going to see what it looks like, okay? But yeah, as far as coconut milk, coconut cream, I've covered coconut milk and coconut cream in a previous episode as well. But if you were using this, and if I had time and I had the luxury of doing like everything individually, if I were just like hired as the dessert chef at a Malaysian restaurant, this is what I would do. I would tip this into a saucepan and simmer it, bring it to a boil, and actually add a pinch of salt to it, okay? Because salt in a lot of Malaysian sweets and all that always kind of like helps to kind of bring out the sweetness in a dish. Okay, but I have to admit, having said that, when I was busy in my restaurant, and you always have to have some token desserts on your menu. What I would do, you know, is make up a big batch of Sago early in the week, stick them into takeaway containers, and they will actually kind of solidify like jelly, right? And then, you know, before you serve it, you know, if they're having it takeaway, you can just add it on top. Is that you would add a couple of spoons of palm sugar syrup and a dollop of coconut cream, okay? You know, but if you want to go fancy, like I said, palm sugar syrup, add some pandan leaves in it. When you're simmering it, that just adds up. Pandan leaves, I mentioned in the previous episode, is essentially what I would like to refer to as Malaysian vanilla. And that just kind of, well, Southeast Asian vanilla, okay? I don't need to be very Malaysia-centric, but that's my background. But you know what I mean. But and what pandan leaves do are basically they add kind of like a subtle flavoring to a lot of dishes, both sweet and savory. Usually more sweet than savory, but you do use it in savory dishes like you know, when you're cooking coconut rice and some curries as well. Okay, but so what you would do usually with pandan leaves, I'm really surprised I don't have any lying around. It's probably tucked deep into my somewhere in my chest freezer downstairs. But what you would do, pandan leaves come in long strips, long blades, and they practically grow wild off the on roadsides and that sort of stuff in Malaysia. But what you would do is just kind of tie up a couple of blades into a knot and then throw it in with your cooking. And if you know, you might actually bruise them a little bit. The whole process of tying it in the knot actually kind of breaks out the flavors a little bit. And then you add it in whatever it is you're simmering or you're steaming and that, or you're cooking, and that just brings out a nice little, very, I guess, subtle flavor to it. And the other way you would use pandan is you would add some water in a blender with some leaves and blend it and then extract the juice. And that actually gives it, because it's green, that gives it a green tinge to a lot of your dishes, okay? So you might find a lot of Malaysian and Southeast Asian steamed desserts, steamed cakes usually look green, and that's what brings out the green in them, the whole, you know, use of pandan leaves and pandan essence and even artificial pandan flavoring, okay? This is gonna cook for a little bit. Oh well, it's off, but I'm just wanting to let it kind of like sit for a little bit. Coconut cream, I've covered this in the previous episode. I tend to use it interchangeably. Really depends on what I use it for. There's no, growing up in Malaysia, I've mentioned this before, we didn't call it coconut cream growing up in Malaysia. Back in my day, I'm that old, that packet coconut cream like this, coconut milk, did not exist, okay? We used to buy our coconut milk fresh, we used to buy grated coconut fresh at our wet market, and then what we would do, depending on what we use it for, is extract it for. Oh, no, that's good. Oh, good. Yeah. If you want thick coconut milk, okay, what we call thick coconut milk, we would bring home the grated coconut, fresh grated coconut, and then extract it for thick coconut milk, okay, without adding anything to it. Usually, you know, you can stick it in a sock or something, or what we call a muslin cloth, for the same, okay, and then extract it without any added water to it, and that's what we would refer to as thick coconut milk. Nowadays, if you go online or if you buy Malaysian cookbooks, there's sometimes references to thick and thin coconut milk. Okay, so keep an eye out for that. But when we mention thick coconut milk, that's what we mean. The first extraction with no added water to your grated coconut. And then when they mention thin coconut milk, after you've extracted the first extraction, You would then add some water to it. Really depends, I guess, on how much, how thin you want the coconut milk to end up. Mix it around a bit and then extract it some more, and that's what they call your second or third extraction, and that's what we refer to as thin coconut milk. So usually, especially with the older recipes, it will say thick coconut milk how much and thin coconut milk how much, and then it would say especially when you're cooking curries, they'll say, add the thin coconut milk, cook it for whatever, and then 5 minutes before you finish it off, add the thick coconut milk, okay? So usually the thin coconut milk goes in first and simmers everything together, and then the thick coconut milk goes in towards the end and you mix it around. And the theory behind it, and I don't know how much weight there is to it, is that they talk about the oil separating sort of thing, like the thick coconut milk may make your gravy curdle or something like that. That has never been an issue when I was doing my cooking, so I never paid too much attention to the stages and like whatever. But nowadays, like I said, since the advent of packet coconut milk and coconut cream, they I guess they correlate thick coconut milk with coconut cream. That's how I would use it, and thin coconut milk with just coconut milk. Okay, it's not an exact correlation because this isn't produced. During the manufacturing process, they don't make coconut cream by just extracting grated coconut with no added water. That's not how they make it. Coconut cream is a thicker version of coconut milk, right? And also it's got a higher fat content essentially, but the process does not basically equate with how it's produced in Malaysia for thick coconut milk, but that's how I would use it. Okay, so any recipe that calls for thick coconut milk, I would use coconut cream, and thin coconut milk with regular coconut milk. Okay, if that makes sense. Now, as far as I know this thing that goes around, that's been on the internet, right? A lot of food bloggers. I'm very cynical about food bloggers who have a lot of head knowledge or who apply their own kind of educated guesses about stuff about Asian cooking without any kind of like personal experience or actual personal like first-person knowledge about it, okay? So there are some food bloggers, and it's actually quite a popular opinion online, that the way you get coconut cream, if you want to make it yourself at home, is you stick some desiccated coconut or freshly grated coconut in a blender, you whiz it, and then you extract it, let it sit for a while, and the top layer, once it settles, top layer is coconut cream, and the bottom layer is thin coconut, is coconut milk, and that's crap, all right? That's BS. That's just their own application of their understanding of dairy cream and dairy milk and how it's produced to an Eastern kind of like concept, okay? So that's not that's not what coconut cream is, because if you let any batch of homemade coconut milk sit long enough, you're going to find it completely separates to the point where the top layer is going to completely virtually like solidify, whereas the bottom layer, if you wait long enough, a couple of hours, 3 hours, it's going to be virtually clear, and that's not coconut milk, okay? That's like coconut water by that stage just about, okay? And speaking of coconut water, that's a completely different thing as well. Coconut water is something that you drink out of a green, fresh coconut, whereas coconut milk is something you extract from the flesh of old coconut, okay? So if you Google coconut online, you might find big green like coconut fruit, or you might find like these really husky brown coconut fruit. And the husky brown coconut fruit is what you use to grate and extract coconut milk and coconut cream from, whereas the big green ones are what you buy to drink the juice out of, okay? And you're going to find that the flesh from fresh green coconut is going to be really gelatinous and nice, actually. And that's not going to make you any coconut milk, coconut cream, because I actually, in fact, know someone who bought these fresh green coconuts home, hoping to be able to extract their own coconut milk out of that, and found it didn't work at all, because first of all, there's very little flesh in them, right? Very little actual coconut in them, and second of all, when they're young, the coconut flesh is very soft and gelatinous. It's not going to be thick and hard that you can actually kind of grate and then use to extract coconut milk out of. Let's see how this is going. Okay. this done, pretty much. There's still like a little bits of pearls that have a white dot in them, but this is near enough for our purposes, right? I don't want to lift this up because I don't want to spill this on the camera. But if you can see this is kind of porridgey, and then what you want to do, if you let this sit for a little bit longer, or if you cook it a little bit longer, the rest of the white dotted pearls will turn completely translucent. Now what you want to do, usually you need to do this over a sink. Okay, you want to strain this, first of all, to get rid of like the residual starch. Okay, and I'm just going to do a small amount here. Okay, so you want to scrape this a little bit. Probably best to use like a spatula. Just, I don't know how well you can make this out, but you can see some of the starch just washing through now. And then what you want to do is actually run this under cold running water. Okay, that's why I said it's best to do this over a sink. And you need a fair bit of water, and you want to wash out some of the starch. Now, it's quite interesting because tapioca or sago is actually used in some traditional Australian dessert. I didn't grow up in Australia, so I didn't know any better, but it seems as though Australians are quite familiar with sago or tapioca pearls. Okay, but they use it in different recipes, obviously. But when I first ran my restaurant, the Australians were used to my Gula Melaka, sago, being in a kind of like a solid, almost like a, not solid, but like, you know, solidified like jelly, right? So they suggested to me, one customer suggested to me, I'll show you what this looks like, okay? So hopefully you can make this out, okay? So you can see it's translucent now, okay? This is translucent sago. And all I've done so far is kind of like scooped it into, through a sieve, right? Scraped out some of the starch, and then just run some cold running water over this, okay? But what the Australian told me, my Australian customer told me to do was to, once I've done this, to this stage, right, to crack an egg white in it, okay? And that will help keep the pearls separate. So I did that for a while, actually, to accommodate Australian expectations of what sago should be like, right? But the fact of the matter is, in Malaysia, for this particular recipe, certainly the ones I've come across anyway, we actually like our, it should in fact be solid, okay? So I've just scooped some of this here into this bowl, and if you let this cool down long enough, this is going to solidify into, you know, so that you can actually tip it out. I'll show you in these pictures here. Like I say, it's not the most aesthetically easy dish to take a photo of, so usually they'll stick them into bowls and then tip them out and they'll be solid like this, okay? So you can see a couple of different ways of having them solid, but they will be like jelly. You just got to wait long enough for it to cool down, okay? And you can see now the texture is just a little bit sticky and it'll be bouncy. But just make sure you take out enough water out of this, because obviously this saucepan has water in it. So basically, scrape out all the water, run some cold water through this, and stick them into molds. If you're keeping this in the fridge till later in the week, just cling wrap it before you use it, okay? And I'm going to pretend that this is ready now, but it will usually take at least half an hour to solidify, okay, once it's completely cooled down. But this is how you would serve it, right? So I've got my palm sugar syrup that I made in my previous broadcast. Okay, so that's the palm sugar syrup, right? And then I would add a dollop of coconut cream in it, right? And like I said, you know, ideally you would want to have simmered the coconut cream with some just a pinch of salt, just to give it a little bit of a contrast, and it just brings out the sweetness in the palm sugar a little bit more. But otherwise, if you don't have time to do that, you can just use the coconut cream right out of the packet, and that's your Gula Melaka that you can serve at your next dinner party. But the other thing I want to mention as well, you want to actually not pour the coconut and the palm sugar on this until you're ready to serve it, because otherwise, as you can see, especially now, this has just completely sunk through into the layers of sago. Now that's because the sago hasn't had time to actually solidify. But in theory, if the sago was was solidified, you would see 3 layers. Okay, that would be quite pretty. So you'll see a layer of like translucent pearls, a layer of brown sugar syrup or palm sugar syrup, and a white layer of coconut cream or coconut sauce. And that's your Sago Gula Melaka. Like I said, having said Sago Gula Melaka, the product I'm using is actually Tapioca pearls, not Sago pearls, even though they are used interchangeably. So have a look at that in the shops and give it a shot next time. This is how you produce perfect Sago pearls every single time. Just get a nice amount of water in a saucepan, bring it to a boil, throw in a packet of sago, gently stir it for about 10 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes, okay, until you see that the pearls are getting more and more translucent. But before they go completely translucent, turn off the heat, stick a lid on it, leave it alone for another 10 minutes, then open up the lid. And then once you've done that, you want to strain it, okay, through a sieve, and then run it under cold running water to wash out more of the starch. Drain it a little bit more, right? Okay, if there's too much liquid in there, it's not going to quite work. But drain it a bit more and then stick them into molds, and that will give you your sago pearls, and then you can use it for whatever recipe. And like I said, like my Australian customer suggested, if you were using it for a different dish to Gula Melaka, you can crack an egg white in the pearls, mix it around, and that will help keep them separate. Okay, give it a shot and let me know how you go. Now, so this forms the last of my 30 days, 30 Asian ingredients broadcast. Tomorrow, I will be back, but to do a Thermomix broadcast with Zona. And then after that, I'm going to take the rest of the week off because I'm actually filming for a TV show. So that will keep me busy for a few more days. Next week, I'm going to launch a new series. It's not going to be every day because it's just killing me. But keep an eye out for my announcement online on social media, on my website, and all that sort of stuff. And I thank you so much, guys, for joining me. And for those who have stuck with me through thick and thin over the last 30 days, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you tuning in. And I will see you again. I'll catch you later. Ciao.